everybody, welcome to today's episode of Office Real Talk with Taz. Today I'm going to do a slightly different episode and get into something quite personal, which is ADHD. But even if you don't have ADHD and you're listening to this, I'm not going to talk about ADHD in itself alone. I'm going to talk about the pressure around high performance, around how we always have to be on, about the overwhelm that causes, and about what that means for us when we're trying to navigate the world of work. So strap in. My name's Taz. I'm a woman. I'm brown. I grew up in Birmingham. I was raised by a single mum on free school meals. I've spent the last few years navigating corporate exec life. And what I've learned over the years is there is a set of corporate rules nobody is saying out loud. And that's why I created this podcast. This space is for us to unpack those rules and to help you figure out how you want to navigate the system and engage with it. I would love for you to follow on Office Real Talk on Instagram or TikTok and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, so we can get more of us listening and winning in the corporate world. So let me start by talking a little bit about how my diagnosis came about. So I had absolutely no idea I had ADHD. How I didn't know goes beyond me now that I do know. But I think I started realizing I had it when me and my husband started living together. And it was little things that were happening around the house that were just really, really great on him that I was doing, but also things that he was doing that I just couldn't cope with. And I think what I started realizing is we used to eat a lot of chicken wraps, right? And when we would get a takeaway, he would be opening the bag, a paper bag, from the chicken shop. And I'd just be like, hey, that's too much noise. Can you go and do that somewhere else? And he's like, I'm literally just opening a chicken wrap. Like, where do you want me to go? And we were living in my flat at the time, right? So it's not as big as the house we've got now. There was very few places he could go. Also, I remember a time in COVID, I'd just come off a meeting and I could hear a truck reversing. And it's going beep, 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 beep. And that noise was driving me up the wall. I couldn't explain how much I just couldn't cope with the noise. Now, I was living alone at the time. I just finished my meeting. So I closed all the windows. And bear in mind, I've got a new build flat, right? So it's very noise proof. I could still hear it. So I went and sat in the hallway on the floor with a blanket over my head to shut the noise out. Now, I know if you're visualizing that, you're probably like, bloody hell, Taz, that's extreme. But in that moment, I did not know how to cope. I couldn't figure out how to cope. And I just needed that noise to go away because it was driving me mad. I actually cried because I just didn't know what to do. So I realized I could get overstimulated. I was very sensitive to what was happening around me. Fast forward, my husband's constantly saying, go and get checked out. There might be something there. And I'd been having a lot of therapy in COVID because when you're alone with your thoughts for that long in lockdown, your brain goes everywhere, right? So I started therapy to work through a bunch of stuff in my life. But I was noticing all of these things were still happening, that were completely different to the stuff I was talking about in therapy, overstimulation, anxiety, just ruminating thoughts, like I couldn't turn my thoughts off. Anyway, I am in New York for an offsite. And I've got a new boss. And at the end of the 2 days, we just happened to be walking to the train station together, right? And he looks at me, my new boss, who's only met me in person for these 2 days and half an hour separately. And he said to me, and he's Australian, right? So he didn't have a filter. He was like, you should get checked out. And I was like, for what? He was like, I think you might be on the spectrum or something. And I just looked at him and I was like, I don't think you can say that. And he was like, no, I'm not saying it in an offensive way. I've observed you over the last 2 days. Your brain works so quickly, you're so intelligent, and people who are like that often might have some kind of neurodivergence. And I laughed and I just said to him, look, my husband always says the same thing, maybe. The behavior that he'd picked up on is I couldn't sit still for those 2 days. Every time there was a break, I would run out so I didn't have to be with people. I would eat all the sweets that were available around the table. I need these because they were getting me through. So all of those things happened, and finally I bit the bullet and I decided to get diagnosed. And I was very blessed that I could go private, and I booked an appointment with this psychiatrist. There was forms to fill out that my husband filled out and my mum filled out, and I had this diagnosis. And when I turned up to the call, and this is a very kind of ADHD coded thing for those people who've read it, they might relate. There was a set of instructions before the meeting, which I hadn't read. So I get on this call with the psychiatrist and she's like, have you got your ID? And I just freeze. I'm like, no, I didn't know I needed it. And she was like, well, I need to see some form of photographic ID before we can go with the diagnosis, because it was virtual. So I said, give me a minute. So now I'm off camera, I'm frantically searching around my house, but that is literally my life. I will do the big thing, but the admin that sits around it, oh my God, can I cope? Absolutely not. So we get past that, and she opened up the conversation with one of the most validating things that has ever been said to me in my life. And she just said, Tasneem, I know we've never met, and this is my first time meeting you, but I just want to say congratulations on everything you've achieved in your life. Because to do that with everything you've been through and the struggle you've probably been carrying is no mean feat. And I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you and I've never met you. And I literally was about to cry. And I just said to her, thank you for saying that to me. Because every day I show up with this attitude, with this high performance mentality, with this, I'll get shit done, whether it's in work, outside of work, I've got it handled, Olivia Pope energy. My brain is doing things that I just find such a struggle, and I never knew what it was, and I didn't know how to say it to anybody. Now, I was a high performer at school. I was very confident. I'm an eldest daughter, so I was always on and doing things, right? And I was able to then mask the ADHD, which is very, very common in girls. If you're high performing, if you can actually nail what you're doing, if you are the kind of person that gets shit done, you can often hide the struggles that you are going through. Now, those struggles might be ADHD related. They might just be struggles that you have as a person. They could be anxiety, they could be the pressure of everything you have outside of work, anything. But high performers often mask struggle. So that's a little bit about my diagnosis. So if you do think that you've got ADHD, or you do think that, there's something that you can't explain, my biggest flex would be go and get help. And I meet people all the time like, I know I've got it, I don't need the diagnosis. How do you know? Don't let TikTok and Instagram fool you into you've got ADHD. And when you get a diagnosis, it'll tell you all of the different elements of it. Things that I just didn't know, that I would never have picked up from social media. Things that a proper professional can tell you that will help you and could potentially change your life and how you deal with yourself. How ADHD shows up for me. So let's get into that next. So how ADHD shows up for everybody is really personal and very different. For me, there's like 3 or 4 big things, right? The overwhelm. I can get overwhelmed very easily. I won't always show it, but I will definitely feel it. So overwhelm can be when 3 people are talking to me at once. Overwhelm can be at work, really long emails, like never do that to me. Overwhelm at work could be the constant Teams messages when I am having a conversation. Overwhelm for me at home can be the TV's on, the dishwasher's on, the air fryer's on, and me and my husband need to have a conversation about logistics and where we're meant to be next week at 3 p.m. I can't cope. So overwhelm for me is when there's so much happening around me that I internally feel like I need to shut down or I can't cope and my brain hurts. And what's really interesting is as I've said that out loud, my heart has just sank and my brain's feeling like I'm getting a headache. So even talking about it can make me feel overwhelmed. That's the first thing. The second thing is hyperfixation. When I want to do something, I want to do it. I've got a new business idea every 5 minutes. My husband's in the corner here, by the way, and he's nodding because he knows this. I wanted to start this podcast. I started it. I had a business idea 3 months ago. Wanted to do that. I go all in and I am hyperfixated and hyper-focused. But once that novelty wears off, I'm bored. If I'm not getting dopamine from it, if I'm not seeing immediate success, I'm out. And that really worries me about Office Real Talk, actually, because I started maybe 4 years ago and I couldn't be consistent because of work, right? I just couldn't manage it with everything else that was going on in my life. However, since I've been more consistent and I've got help and support, it's been easier. But on the days that the results aren't coming through, on the days where I'm not getting influencer level growth, I'm like, is this worth it? Now, I know that this is worth it because it's my purpose and passion, but I do worry that the dopamine hits don't always come so easily. So I have to find them in the little things. I always need to verbally process things, which is really hard when you're trying to regulate. So if something happens that I just can't get through or I can't make sense of, I need to talk about it 4, 5, 6 times. So if you're my friends, I'm going to talk to you about the same thing over and over again. And I particularly struggle with that at work because at my level, you can't talk to everybody about everything. You have very few friends and you have very few people that you trust. And the more senior you get, the lonelier it gets. So having a few people to confide in is very, very important. But then you're constantly verbally processing the same thing to them. And I have to worry about how it's impacting them as well. And then there's quite a lot of other things like, emotional overwhelm. I've got a lot of anxiety. I'm always stuck in overthinking loops. But the biggest one I want to talk to you about that I'd never heard of until I got my diagnosis is rejection sensitivity disorder. And rejection sensitivity disorder is when you take anything that someone might say to you that you might perceive as bad, you just don't let that go. I've got a few examples, right? One of the times, one of my friends and like really close people at work gave me some feedback about how I'd made them feel once. And they said, oh, I don't think it's rude. Just when you do that, I don't want you to do it. And I just kept apologizing, and I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd done because I can't let it go. The thought of hurting someone, getting something wrong, or negativity towards me, like it just goes round and round and round in my head. And that's why I did the episode on feedback, because that is real. But I've had to really work on, not all feedback is about me, not all feedback is valid, and not all feedback is a personal attack. But that has taken so much practice, and it goes against how my brain actually works. So rejection sensitivity disorder, if it's part of your diagnosis, if you do get diagnosed, or if it is something you resonate with, it's a real thing. And that just explains so much about how I feel when the psychiatrist talked to me about it. So look, everybody's symptoms and how everybody deals with ADHD is different. You see lots and lots of things on the internet and on social media. I just wanted to talk to you about the real things that happen with me and how that shows up, because despite all of those things, I am still successful and I am still doing what I need to. But that doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean it's taxing. And that doesn't mean that every day when I show up in and out of work, I don't work extra hard to cope with those things, to mask those things, and to move forward. So let's then talk about how ADHD played out in corporate life. So when I got diagnosed, I was really, really mindful about how I wanted to deal with it. I did tell my boss, because he's the one who thought that I might have it. And he was great. He was like, what do you need? How can we do things? What shall we do? I talked a lot about, meetings and the fact that I can't sit still in a room for 7 hours. Now, obviously, he didn't change that, but he understood when I would be like, I need a minute, or I would need to run out at the break. I started to type all my notes on OneNote, so I would always have something to do with my hands. I would take healthy snacks in. I started taking water bottles in. So I was doing things that felt good, that weren't making me bored. And at the time, I decided to tell my team. So at that time, I was managing a team of 40 people. And I put in a call with the most senior team, right? So the senior leaders and my heads off. I said, look, I'm going to need to make some changes. I don't know what they all are. So I'll need you to bear with me. I don't need you to completely adapt, but if we can meet in the middle, that'd be great. And I talked to them about, just like more concise, shorter, sharper emails, no long messages on Teams. It's probably easier to have a chat than get into lots of Teams conversations. The fact that I'll go on Do Not Disturb sometimes because I just need some time out. Not packing my diary back to back. So, I can have like little brain breaks in between, that kind of stuff. I just talked to them about how I might need to show up differently at work and how I would need their support to do that. Now, that is a really personal choice, and I did that because it was a team of people I trusted. Not everybody can do that. I've had lots of questions about, do I disclose this at work or not? Let me tell you, it is completely personal. You can decide what you do with it. You don't have to tell people. You don't have to go out and make a big song and dance, but you also don't have to hide it. And you are absolutely entitled to ask for adjustments. You are absolutely entitled to ask for support. And you are absolutely allowed to make changes to the way you work and how you navigate work to help yourself. Because until we feel at our best, we can't be our best. That goes for everyone. So many of us, when we navigate corporate life, are so worried about our perception. We're so worried about being labelled with something. We're so worried that telling people we've got ADHD and we struggle with things could make us look incapable. And we're also just really worried about not being seen as a high performer. So therefore, we overcompensate. And I know so many people who do this, even if you don't have ADHD. I know so many people, women, people from ethnic minority backgrounds, people from low income families, who think, I just need to prove myself. So we overcompensate. When you are navigating your own struggles, it is very easy to feel like you need to overcompensate to make sure you don't get caught out. But that can be exhausting, and you've got to make sure you don't exhaust yourself. How your manager can support you through ADHD is also something that I want to talk about. So I talked to you about my manager, the one who thought I might have the diagnosis. The kind of things he was talking to me about were, how can I help you? We had really practical conversations. It would come up in every one of my one-to-ones. And I talk through the fact that I didn't need him to do lots of things, but here's the times when I would be struggling more that I've identified. And in those moments, I might need to tap out, but here's how I'm going to try and regulate myself. So when you think I'm not, can you tell me and can we talk about it? So creating that accountability. The worst thing that a boss can do is, thanks for telling me, let me know if there's anything I can do. Because that doesn't sound genuine. I also know someone really senior who I worked with before. When I told them I had it, they were like, is it like a real thing or is it just something that, you're kind of saying? And I was so disappointed that he said that. I was so disappointed because I respected him, and I still do respect him on other things so much, but he almost tried to fob it off as a trend. And that's why I get really, really, really pissed off with the whole social media. You know, we're all a little bit ADHD. No, we're not all a little bit ADHD. ADHD is a condition, and it means your frontal lobe has not developed in the same way that others has. So if that has happened to you, I'm sorry. But I also think it's our responsibility, because we know the system is flawed, we know the system is broken, we know not all managers know how to lead, that we need to show up with specifics of what we need, how we need it, and make it really clear to people. Because if you don't tell people what you need, how will they know? Okay. So lastly, I want to finish with what are the things I do and the systems and frameworks I have in place that have really helped me navigate my ADHD at work. Let's start with routine. I need routine and I need repeatable patterns. So I have pretty much the same wake up time every morning. Now that doesn't have to be the same for everybody else. So I wake up around 5:30. I have learned that if I move my body, my brain can almost get into a place where it's focused on something that is slow, it's intentional, but it isn't an urgency to go and check my laptop, to go and check my phone, you know, rush through the morning. So I will do 20 minutes of Pilates, etc., that I've started putting into my life. Then when I think about work, I start my week in the same way every single week. So Monday morning, 9 a.m. is my leadership team huddle. Every week without fail, unless there's a clash. That is so I know what to expect. I don't have to guess what my calendar's going to look like. 9 a.m. every morning, that's what we start with. My diary used to be back to back, but one of the things that my PA did, hello Robbie, one of the things that my PA did was, instead of scheduling back-to-back meetings where I was really struggling and I was feeling overwhelmed, when I told her about my ADHD, she would put in breaks, calling them brain breaks. So in between meetings or meeting chunks, she will put in, whether it's 15 minutes or half an hour, brain break. And that gives me the opportunity to download my notes, make a phone call, go and get a bite to eat, go and get a bit of fresh air, whatever I need to do, because before I would go 6 or 7 hours without a break. And I was doing that to myself. So the start of my week is the same. Through the week, I have those checks and balances. Every week, me and my office do a weekly review. So we plan the next 2 weeks ahead. And once a month, we do a monthly review where we look at the next month and the quarter as well. So I'm always planning ahead, and I've got systems and framework. Every week, I know what's happening. Every 2 weeks, every month. Systems and frameworks are absolutely essential to getting ahead, to help you regulate. That isn't just for ADHD. The best people I know work in systems and frameworks. At the end of the week on a Friday, I do a brain dump. And I look at everything I need to do for next week. What did I need to do for this week that I haven't done? I'll do a big purge of my inbox. I'll clean anything out. If I've got some small notes to send, I'll send them out. Everything is in order. And on a Sunday, as most of you know who've been following me for a while, I plan my week, where I'm meant to be, what I'm meant to be doing. And I plan in my non-negotiables first. My exercise, my time with my family, my friends, my husband, anything I want to do. Schedule your fun like it matters. Schedule your most important things, your non-negotiables, like you schedule your meetings. Run the week, or the week runs you. So my Sunday, my Monday, my week, my Friday, my 2 weeks, my month, my quarter are all planned in using systems and frameworks. Now, you don't have to be as fancy as that, but knowing what you're doing on a Monday, ending the week on a Friday with a brain dump, and using Sunday to plan your week ahead gives you control over your brain and gives you systems and frameworks. In terms of how I organize just contacting people, I have meetings that I do. Outside of those meetings, if people want time, I will first ask them if they can use the meetings we've already got so I don't overwhelm myself. I insist on not having really, really long emails. If there's a really long email, I'll reply back saying, thank you. It's a really long email. There's a lot to absorb here. Shall we jump on a call? I can't go back and forth on Teams too much. So when there is a conversation too much, I'll just be like, hold on, we're probably going back and forth loads. Can I give you a quick call? And I absolutely exercise my right to use Do Not Disturb when I need to do deep focus work. So many people don't do that because they think they need to be available all the time. You need to be available to you first before you're available to anyone else. So I absolutely exercise my right to do that. And on a Friday afternoon, I leave as much time as possible to do my Friday work. Sometimes that's on Do Not Disturb, but mainly it's just meeting free time. So they're the kind of things I've learned to do that have just really helped me. They might sound really simple, but they're so important to me. Like my sacred routines that help me keep my sanity. Am I consistent all the time? No. Am I motivated to manage my life and my ADHD in this way all the time? No. But have I created discipline? 100%. Do I feel better for it? 100%. You have to take things into your own hands if you want to feel better. You're not miraculously going to start feeling differently or feeling less overwhelmed or less stressed out or, more regulated if you don't take the action. And remember, the only way to manage anxiety is by taking action. So, to wrap up, my biggest question that I'd ask you is, what part of yourself have you been criticizing instead of understanding? Whether you have ADHD or not, what parts of yourself are you committed to criticizing and not understanding, which is why you cannot give yourself kindness and you cannot give yourself grace? And they are the things you absolutely owe yourself. You can be successful and still struggle. You can be senior and still feel overwhelmed. And you can have ADHD without being the stereotype that people and social media expect you to be. I hope you found this episode useful. I find it really hard to talk about this stuff, so I hope it's been eye-opening for you. If you'd like me to talk about more things, I don't really know where to go with everything, but if there's more things that you would find useful, my DMs are always open. Let me know. I can do another episode on it. But I hope me sharing has helped you. This is the work, and I want to help more and more of us, whatever that looks like, whether that's, who we are, what we do, or how our brains work. Thank you as ever for listening. If you have enjoyed this episode and you want to get into more things around how to navigate your career, if you're feeling stuck in your career, just a reminder that I'm running a masterclass on the 28th of May. It's called Unstick Your Career. It's going to be talking about how to identify what kind of stuck you are, how to talk about yourself and what you want, how to talk to your sponsors, your CV, your LinkedIn, etc. It's an hour and 15 minutes. I'd love you to join. Tickets are available in the link in my bio, and I would really love your support. So hopefully see you there, but if not, see you in my DMs and on the next episode. Thank you.